to Lamplighter Theater's very first audio drama musical.
Many, many questions running through my mind. If I keep on asking, the answers I will find.
A little girl named Kitty, a mysterious note, and a quest that will change her eternity and the lives of everyone around her. This is Hungering and Thirsting.
Blessed are they who hunger and thirst.
Along the way, Kitty meets Mr. Scott, the elusive neighbor with a secret. Dick, the street peddler who struggles to believe God is good.
You can have it.
And Jamie, the crippled boy abandoned by his father.
Please help me.
How can a good God allow suffering in the world?
The answers I will find.
To order Hungering and Thirsting, go to lamplighter.net. Lamplighter.net.
And now, Fastened Like Nails with Dr. Mark Hamby.
Welcome to Fastened Like Nails, and once again, I'm here in London, England, at the Soundhouse Studio. We're recording two dramas today. We're recording Courage of Nikolai and Behind the Door, and God has just been so good to us. In fact, just this morning, we went to a cafe that we had gone to 6 months ago when we were recording, and the gentleman that owns the cafe, his name is Paul, and he's Jewish, and I noticed this morning that he had a tattoo on his arm with the Hebrew word to live or life. Commented on it, and one thing led to another, and was able to ask him if he'd be offended if I shared something about what Jesus said. He said, after a long dialogue, he said no, that I'd be fine to share it. And I said, Jesus said that he was the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through him. And so you never know. Those are seeds planted. God has been so good while I've been here in England and Wales. Everywhere we've gone, literally every day, God has opened the door to sow a seed from his word and from his truth. And it's so exciting. And in fact, this morning, we had a devotion this morning with our team in John 17, where Jesus says that he wanted his disciples to have his joy in them. And he was praying to the Father that they would be able to have just that, his joy. And I was thinking, what is his joy? And in Hebrews chapter 12, it says, the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despised the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And Christ's joy, he wants us to have his joy. And his joy is where we endure the cross. You will find God's greatest joy at the foot of the cross. And so wherever you are in life today, maybe you've been betrayed, maybe you've been maligned, maybe you have been unloved, uncared for, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're just wondering, is it worth it? And I'll say this, is that whenever you're having those types of feelings, the place where your joy is renewed is always at the cross. And so go to the cross and you'll find the joy. It's always found at the cross. The joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. And so the cross is the place of the greatest joy. And that's the place where we die to ourselves, where we take up our cross and follow him. And when that happens and you let go of the unforgiveness, let go of the hostility, let go of the bitterness, let go of all of that stuff, the bitterness turns to joy. And it's found at the cross. Okay, today, Finding Fulfillment is the title. It's in Ecclesiastes, chapters 1 through 12. Actually, we're not going to cover the entire book. But I think Ecclesiastes, for me, is one of my favorite books of the Bible, without question. That and the book of Leviticus, two of my favorite books. But the etymology of the book of Ecclesiastes, where the word actually comes from, is fascinating. Many scholars refer to the ecclesia as an assembly of people, or the church. That's where we get the idea of church, the ecclesia. But I think the meaning is far greater than that, deeper than that. The Hebrew word for Ecclesiastes is koholeth. It refers to a preacher or an assembler or a collector of words, like a preacher who assembles God's words together and then communicates the truths of those words to an assembly. If you study the book as a whole, you'll see that the assembly or collection is in reference to an author's collection of words. Now, let's drill down and see if I can make this easy to understand. You may have heard me say this before, that you can't understand what the Bible means until you know how it means. I'm referring to the structure, the style, the repetition, the poetry, the narration, the syntax, the lexical meaning, the context, and much, much more. When you study the Bible from all angles, you'll see that the Bible always, and I love this, the Bible always interprets itself. For example, I'm reading John 16 through 21 right now, and I've been reading it for several weeks, every morning, every night, studying it, just drilling down, like I was saying, and starting to pick out the repetition, pick out the phrases that are repeated. Like, for example, the word world, I believe, is repeated 15 times just in chapter 17 itself. The word given is repeated over a dozen times. The word word is repeated several times. The word glory is probably repeated at least a dozen times. And so that emphasis on those repeated words will give you kind of the structure of where the intended meaning is going. And that's what the preacher is doing in the book of Ecclesiastes. Of course, when you think of the book of Ecclesiastes, most people are going to think of the book as reference to vanity, vanity, all is vanity. But by doing that and not focusing on the repetition, you're going to miss the meaning. And so that's why it's important to look at the whole of the book. So here we go. The first verse begins with, ready? The words of the preacher. The second verse begins with, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. So already God is speaking volumes. But most people, if I were to give you a immediate quiz on this, what's the book about? You would say, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Or most of you would say that. Let me just read it again. The words of the preacher, vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Okay? Those repeated words, vanity of vanity, kind of takes you off guard a little bit because you think that's what the focus of the book is about. But if you miss the first 4 words, or 5, it's the words of the preacher. And if you miss the words of the preacher, guess what? Then all of life will be vanity, vanity. And so if you look at the book as a whole, chapter 1, first verse, all the way to chapter 12, what you'll find is the entire book of Ecclesiastes is framed with the words of the preacher. As you look at this framing of the book of Ecclesiastes with the words of the preacher on one side, the preacher's words on the other side, in the center of this book, you have the emphasis of vanity of vanities, verse 2, vanity of vanities, chapter 12, verse 8. Again, the words of the preacher are on both ends of that. If you miss the words of the preacher, then all of life is vanity. Now, if you'd like to actually see this beautiful structure, you can go to lamplighter.net/podcast. That's lamplighter.net/podcast or fastenedlikenails.net. And there you can sign up if you're not receiving the Sunday morning reflections. We do every 6 a.m. every Sunday morning. You'll receive an email that will allow you to read and see some of the beautiful structure of how the Bible means. Now, I'm going to try to paint a picture for you. If you could picture me writing on a chalkboard or on a whiteboard, I want you to picture the book of Ecclesiastes written in such a way that it frames it. For example, chapter 1, verse 1 says the words of the preacher. Chapter 12, verses 9 through 11 says the preacher's words. And there it gives 3 categories of words: words of delight, words of truth, and words of wisdom. And so the entire book of Ecclesiastes is framed with this device of words of the preacher, 1:1, and the preacher's words, 12:9 through 11. In between the words of the preacher and the preacher's words are vanity of vanities in verse 2, all the way down to 12, verse 8, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. It's really interesting, how this book is framed with almost identical words. Listen to this again. I'll do the first 2 verses and then expand it in chapter 1. The words of the preacher, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That's chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Chapter 12, verses 8, 9, 10, 11. Here you go. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity, the preacher's words. He reverses the order to give this beautiful frame And then next in line in chapter 2, you have everything that's under the sun. All the way down in chapter 10, you have again this phrase, everything under the sun. Back to chapter 3, next in line, a time for everything. Chapter 8, verse 6, a time for everything. Chapter 3, verses 10 through 14, the work of God. Chapter 7, the work of God, which brings you right to the center. Now, before I reveal the center, I'm just going to read it, in its fullness so you can get a picture of it. So this is how the book of Ecclesiastes is framed. The words of the preacher, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, everything under the sun, a time for everything, work of God. Then down below, at the very end of this frame, you've got the exact same wording. Work of God, a time for everything, under the sun, vanity of vanities, the preacher's words. Which brings us to the center. And this is, when I found this, I was like, whoa, this is just incredible. The book of Ecclesiastes has these identical words and phrases from both ends working to the center. The center is chapter 7. And this is what it says. You're going to find it unusual at first, but we'll get there. I find a woman with snares. Please God and you'll escape. I'm giving you the abbreviated form. That's chapter 7. Again, I find a woman with snares. Please God and you will escape. This I found, says the preacher. I found that God made man upright, but man made many schemes. What you have here in the very center of the book of Ecclesiastes, that's framed with the words of the preacher, the preacher's words, and then after that, vanity of vanities. You see, if you avoid the preacher's words and you do not live within the boundaries of the preacher's words, then you're going to find something. In fact, the word find or found appears 7 times in chapter 7. So obviously, God is emphasizing this repeated word for a reason. The question is, what are we finding? And what we find in the center of this book, we find 2 main people. You find this woman with snares, which represents folly, and you find God. And in the center of all of it, it says this I found, says the preacher. The book of Ecclesiastes presents mankind on a quest for answers. What are you searching for? What are you finding? Solomon found that all of his pleasurable pursuits left him empty and unfulfilled. Yet through his failures, he left us a treasure map to true meaning and fulfillment. If you follow the words of the preacher, you will find and enjoy the fulfilling treasures more than you can imagine. Anything beyond these words, though, Solomon writes, listen to this, beware. Interesting, the very ending of the book of Ecclesiastes, the concluding statement, you have this warning, beware of anything beyond the words of delight, truth, and wisdom. Interesting. Solomon places this warning after listing the most important words that we're to live by, words of delight, truth, and wisdom. Catch this, mom and dad, grandparents, we need to take this warning to heart. The health of our children's souls depend on taking this warning seriously. To live outside the boundaries of the words of delight, truth, and wisdom will lead to an empty life. Most of the books, video games, films, social media, and the like are outside, most of them, if not all of them, outside the words that give protection and meaning to life. Just think about it. The books that children have access to today in school and libraries, I've been there, I've seen it. There's just hardly anything that's of value, that's of delight. When the child reads something, by the way, it should leave a sense of great delight where they can't stop reading. They can't put the book down. But when they end the book or a chapter and they feel this emptiness inside, that's a book that is not to be read. You know, a lot of people think that, I need to give my children, they need to have a wide range of reading experiences. That's nonsense. You know, God is saying, think on things that are good and just and lovely and of good report. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. We have a short life to live. We need to be preparing our minds and our hearts for an eternal life, not a life that is on this earth. And so we have this short time. The only thing that's going to count are things that are eternal, of eternal value. Paul in Corinthians says, things are going to get burnt up. If they're hay and wood and stubble, they're going to get burned up, and we lose reward. But the things that are eternal, they're going to remain. Follow the words, and you'll find fulfillment. That's really the key. Truly, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Jesus said it best. You are clean through the word which is spoken unto you. God bless.
You've been listening to Fastened Like Nails, a presentation of Lamplighter Ministries. Our mission is to make ready a people prepared for the Lord by building Christ-like character, one story at a time. To learn more about our family collection of rare books, dramatic audios, or guild programs, visit lamplighter.net. To hear more podcasts, search for Fastened Like Nails wherever you listen to podcasts.